My name is Danielle Sicard, and I'm the town clerk here in Easton. I'm here today to talk to you about what you need to know before going to the polls to vote on Election Day. Before I start, if you don't want to come to the polls on Election Day, you have the opportunity to vote by mail. I'm going to warn you that you really need to file that application as soon as possible. We recommend that you give at least 2 weeks notice to the town clerk's office in order to make sure that you receive your ballot and your ballot comes back to us in time to count. You can find that application on our website at www.easton.ma.us/votebymail.pdf. All the information that I'm going to provide for you today in this public service announcement will be also available on the website at www.easton.ma.us/knowbeforeyougo.pdf. So here I am at Oliver Ames High School. This is our polling location for all voting in the town of Easton. Obviously, with the pandemic, we've made some modifications to the layout of how the polling location will be set up. And we're here to make sure we can ensure the safety of all of our voters and all of the election workers who will be working that day. So to promote social distancing, we're going to be utilizing 2 of the gyms instead of just the old gym that we normally use for voting. We're going to be using the new gym for precincts 1, 2, and 6, and the old gym for precincts 3, 4, and 5. Yes, I do know that does not go in order of numbers, but it's based on the districts that we have here in town. So all voters must, no matter what precinct you are, enter in through this main entrance here. This is the entrance to the atrium and also to the gyms. You can see that there's 3 doors here. Everybody who is entering into precinct 1, 2, and 6 for the old gym would be using the doors to the left, the double doors to the left, and to the right would be for precincts 3, 5, and 6. So what are voters' options for parking? You can either utilize the Moscato Stadium field parking lot, or you can use the students' main parking lot, which is behind the building. This one here that we're showing is now the Moscato Field parking lot, and behind the building is the student parking, and it's actually where the old entrance for the polling locations used to be. So obviously you're going to need to know your precinct when you come here to vote. You can find out your precinct on our website at www.easton.ma.us/whatsmyprecinct.pdf. All of these that I'm giving you with the backslash, there's no spaces, so whatsmyprecinct.pdf. I'm going to bring you inside and do a quick walk around so you have an idea of what to expect when you arrive at the polls. Okay. So here we are in the atrium after you've entered through the front foyer doors. You can see here that there's 2 lines. If you entered in through precinct 1, 2, and 6, you're going to proceed through these stanchions to the new gym. There will be markers on the floor, and we ask that you stay at each distance being 6 feet from each other so that we can maintain social distancing protocols. The same is true for precincts 3, 4, and 5, which are going into the old gym. They will line in those stanchions and proceed there as well. For a moment, I want to just talk to you about the lines that will be outside and the lines that will be here in the foyer and before you enter into the gym. I want to talk to you just a little bit about family units. So that is people that you do not have to social distance from, that were within your family and in your home. Those can each take one of those 6-foot markers and stand on it. You do not need to take one each individually in these lines proceeding. Once you get into the gym and you approach the check-in and the checkout table, that must be only one voter at a time that approaches. But in the interim, to reduce our lines, we ask that your family units use one marker and you proceed all the way to the gym entrances as a family. So once you're here at the entrance of the gym, there will be a greeter that is here. That person is going to give you permission, similar to when you go to supermarkets now to get in line to shop. There'll be a greeter here that will say when it's time for you to proceed into the right precinct line, just to, again, make sure that we're all within 6 feet of each other and that social distancing protocols remain in place. Okay, so now you finally made it to the check-in table. You can see here that there will be a person behind the table and that we have plexiglass. Plexiglass will be available in every one of the locations where there's face-to-face contact with a voter and an election official. As I had mentioned earlier, only one person at a time should be approaching the table for check-in. even if your family unit was together up to this point. They can only do one voter at a time to check them in. The way it works at check-in is you'll be asked to provide some information in a particular order. There'll be a sign here that will tell you to provide your last name and then your first name, and then after that to give your address. The way the law works is at that point, the election official must repeat your last name, first name, and your address. And they need to repeat it loudly in the event that there are observers. Sometimes it feels a little awkward when the neighbor who you already know, who already knows your name, is making them go through this formal process, but that's an explanation. They're required by law to do that. You should have an ID with you just in case. There are some voters who will be required to show an ID. Give you a little bit of information on how that works. If you are an inactive voter, that makes your status is inactive. Doesn't mean that you don't participate in voting. If you have an inactive status, essentially that's because you haven't returned your annual census form to us every year. You then would be required to show proof through an ID that has your name and your address as listed on our voting list. So I recommend that you bring that with you. If you want to check that out in advance of election, we would strongly advise that you do that. You can go to the Secretary of State's website and do voter registration search. That voter registration search will give you all of the information that you need in regards to your status, your precinct number, and whether or not you're a registered voter. Here, once they've checked you in, they would provide you with a ballot through this slot and opening right here. On the side, there are voting pens available to you. We do recommend, if you're uneasy about using one of our voter pens, these will be clean, that you could bring one from home. But please note that that pen has to be a black or a blue, and it needs to be either a felt marker pen or like a Sharpie type pen. Any other pens and marking devices could cause issues with the tabulators actually reading your ballot correctly. For those voters who do want to borrow a pen, you would take the pen from here with you to the voting booth, and you can take that pen to the checkout and deposit it there. So the dirty pens will be left at checkout, and the clean pens would be here available at check-in. Going to move on now to marking your ballot. So the voting booths, being in two different gyms, allow us to space them out more. And so they'll be at least 6 feet from each other and ample space within each of the precincts for the voting booths. When you go into a voting booth, you will see I will give you a few reminders. First of all, you want to make sure that you fill in the oval completely. Do not use check marks or X's on your ballot, as that will cause problems with the tabulators not reading your markings correctly. As I mentioned, make sure that you're using the pen that's either provided or bringing a blue or a black felt marker pen as well. I will make a note here that if you're uncomfortable with using a shared voting booth, which by the way will be cleaned throughout the day, not after every voter, but throughout the day they will be cleaned. If you're concerned about that, feel free to bring a clipboard with you or a book, and you can stand inside of the precinct and mark your ballot that way. Another caution in regards to your ballot is that you must ensure that your ballot does not get wet. So if it's a rainy day, do not place the ballot up against your jacket or your clothes if they get wet. If the voting booth was recently cleaned and it's still wet and you place your ballot on it, that's a problem. If you use hand sanitizer while you're holding your ballot and the ballot gets wet, those will all become issues when you try to feed that through the tabulator. And it won't just be an issue for your ballot, it will be an issue with the tabulator jamming and breaking down and having hand counts for all of the ballots rather than the tabulators reading them. Sure. So after you've marked your ballot, you're going to proceed to the far end of the gymnasium. Not the area that you came in, but to the far end. Please remember to keep social distancing as you leave your voting booth and come to the checkout. There once again will be lines and markers for 6 feet apart to wait in line to get to the checkout position here. You'll see once again we have a plexiglass shield here as you once again provide that same information that you did at check-in. They'll ask you to say your last name, your first name, and your address, and once again are required by law to say that out loud. The purpose of that is to really confirm that the right voter has been marked in and out. And sometimes that gets complicated when you have juniors and seniors and different middle initials for names. So pay close attention at that point. Once you've finished, and again, remember that only one voter can come to the table at a time. Excuse me, once you've finished with your checkout person, they're going to give you permission to step aside to the ballot box. The ballot box would be here at the end of the checkout table. I'll say what you need to do here is you need to verify that the ballot box first says on it, system ready. That means it's ready to accept your ballot. It's finished processing the one before it and it's ready to accept it. And you should be able to put your ballot in any way or direction, upside down, back end, forward end, any way that will fit through the tabulator. It will read it correctly. And you should wait before you step away from the ballot box for the LCD screen to now say ballot cast. That means that it's already gone through, there's been no issues, it's read your ballot, it's not going to shoot back out and tell you that you have some type of an issue with the reading of your ballot. From there, I would ask that you step aside as quickly as you can, because as I mentioned, only one person can be in front of the checkout and only one person can be in front of the ballot box. So the longer you kind of congregate at the ballot box after it says cast ballot, the next person is kind of held up and the rest of the line is held up. So once you're done, you're going to step aside. The exit is on the far end. One area here will be the exit out onto the students' main parking lot. So I know I've provided you with an awful lot of information. I would encourage you to review this information on a one-page flyer that we have available on our website. Once again, that's at www.easton.ma.us/knowbeforeyougo.pdf. A quick review of what you need to know before you go. All voters are entering in from this atrium gymnasium entrance, not from the exits that you normally would have prior to COVID-19. Know your precinct. That's going to be really important to go into the right gym, and you can find that information on our website at www.easton.ma.us/whatsmyprecinct.pdf. You need to be wearing a face covering. Have that with you. There will be some public health greeters who will make sure that everybody is wearing a face covering. If you want to bring a pen, make sure it's black or blue. I would recommend that you bring an ID. And when you're at the polls, don't touch your face. Maintain social distancing of 6 feet from anybody not within your family unit. Don't get your ballot wet. And visit the Secretary of State's website in advance to check out your voter registration search. You can also know what you're voting on by looking on the Easton webpage. Under elections, there's a section for sample ballots, so that when you get here, you're already prepared and you can make this a quick visit here. And one final note, if you are exposed to the virus or you're quarantined or isolated in the week leading up to the election, please don't come to the election. There is some special legislation that will allow you to vote from home. It's the only instance when we can actually hand somebody an absentee or early voting ballot. So please, if you're exposed or a significant other in your home is exposed, don't come to the polls. Call our office or email it. The phone number is 508-230-0530, and the email is townclerksoffice@easton.ma.us. And we'd be happy to provide you with information on how we can provide you with a ballot to hand to somebody on your behalf and then return it on your behalf without exposing everybody else and keeping yourself safe. Thanks for your time today. Be safe and well, and we'll see you on Election Day.